What is going on, guys? I'm Crazy Pickle and welcome back to another Skyforge video. We still continue doing the class videos, and today we're gonna talk about the first DPS class that's available for you right from the beginning of the game, which is the Cryomancer. As always, we're gonna look at every ability, their effects, how they look like, the animations. We're also gonna go over the weapon, artifacts, jewelry, gems of power, and of course, symbols. Alright guys, let's get started. So first ability, Cryonic Pulse, deals X amount of damage to the enemy, has 6% chance to grant the Icy Meteor effect to the Cryomancer for 15 seconds, which makes the next Icy Comet free, increasing its damage and critical chance by 100%. Next ability, Icy Missile. So that ability has two stages. It has Icy Thorn stage and then Icy Dart stage. So Icy Thorn deals X amount of damage, ranges 30 yards, activates Companion's attack, deals 200% more damage to targets that have the Cryonic Suspension effect, removing it and knocking them down for 2 seconds while applying intense cooling. Icy Dart deals X amount of damage to the target, deals 3 times as much damage to shields. The attack also applies the Fragments effect to the target that deals X amount of damage every second for 10 seconds, and increases the Cryomancer chance to deal critical damage to the same target again by 15%. Ranges 30 yards, activates Companion attack, and as always deals 200% more damage to target that have the Cryonic Suspension effect, removing it and knocking them down for 2 seconds while applying intense cooling. Icy Comet deals X amount of damage to the target and all enemies in 10-yard radius, applies intense cooling which reduces movement speed. Range is 30 yards. Crystal Shield creates a shield that absorbs 80% of damage for 6 seconds. All targets in 5-yard radius are affected by intense cooling that reduces their movement speed. The ability can be used while under control effects. Glacial Feints inflicts X amount of damage to all enemies in a cone-shaped area in front of the character and applies Cryonic Suspension to them for 4 seconds. It's actually 5 seconds, completely immobilizing and silencing them. The ability is available in PvE adventures only. Cryo Beam inflicts X amount of damage to all enemies along the path of movement. Can consume twice as much cryogen to inflict 3 times more damage and grant the Cryomancer 50% chance to gain the Cryocharge effect for 10 seconds. Cryocharge increases the damage of the next Icy Missiles charge level 1, which is the Icy Thorn, 2 times and makes them free. The ability is available in PvE adventures only. Whiteout creates a 12-yard radius area. All enemies that enter the area takes X amount of damage every second. Last 12 seconds. Every 2 seconds, intense cooling is applied that reduces their movement speed. Jagged Ice inflicts X amount of damage to the enemy every second for 5 seconds. The ability is available in PvE adventures only. Frost Shackles, which is the ultimate ability, applies Cryonic Suspension to all enemies within 16-yard radius, immobilizing and silencing them for 6 seconds, inflicting X amount of damage when the effect runs out. The stronger the enemy, the shorter the duration of the effect. The strongest enemies that are unaffected by it takes 2 times more damage. Northern Breeze, which is the finishing strike, deals fatal damage to the enemy if they have a small amount of health left. Completely restores cryogen, and if I didn't mention what is the cryogen, it's your blue energy underneath your health bar. May grant the Icy Meteor as well effect, which makes the next Icy Comet free, increasing its damage and critical chance by 100%. Moving on to the talents. First one is a Slide. The Cryomancer gains a special dash Slide. Slide allows the Cryomancer to move 15 yards in a selected direction, leaves an icy trail behind. The trail applies intense cooling, which reduces the movement speed of enemies and its area of the effect, and it deals X amount of damage every second. Elerium 9 Talent Crater Ice. Cryocharge increases the critical hit chance of the Icy Missile, charge level 1 Icy Thorn by an extra 50%. Cryocharge effect can be gained when using Cryo Beam, as well as when hitting at least one enemy with a snowball, 100% chance. So it's basically upgrade for your cryo charges, which is that two free right clicks. Super Cooling. The maximum number of intense cooling effects on the target turn into the Icebound effect that prevents them from moving for 2 seconds. The Cryomancer critical chance is increased by 30% for enemies that have intense cooling applied to them, and by 50% for enemies with Icebound and Cryonic suspension. Alright, first let's look at an intense cooling effect and the Icebound effect from the super cooling talent. Well, we know that two abilities apply the intense cooling effect, which is your icy comment and the whiteout. So we're just gonna drop the whiteout, and you can see the blue pentagon have stacks to 5 stacks already, and on the 6 stacks you have like a little leg for like 2 or 3 seconds. You apply icy comet, you can do that too. So that's how the icebound and the intense cooling look like. And because I already mentioned how the cryonic suspension looks like, the glacial feints and the frost shackles only apply that. So that's basically what, when you have the intense cooling, it's 30% critical chance. When it's icebound and cryonic suspension, in 50% chance. Now let's look at the PvP abilities. The only PvP ability it changes, it's only 3 of them, which is the first one is Icy Beam, inflicts X amount of damage and applies cryonic suspension, immobilizing and silencing the target for 3 seconds. Next one is the Snowball, creates a snowball that knocks down the enemies and takes them with it as it rolls alone. Inflicts X amount of damage, the snowball rolls 40 yards in a straight line, breaking apart at the end. When it breaks apart, it throws the enemies away, stunning them for 2.5 seconds. And the last one is Stasis, freezes the target, immobilizing and silencing them for 10 seconds. The target is immune to incoming damage for the duration. Alright, let's talk about the weapon, artifact, jewelry, gems of power, and symbols. So we're gonna start with the weapon. The best weapon, in my opinion, right now is the Frosty Bloom. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would agree with me on that as well. The reason why it's because the Demon Heart is actually got nerfed, so the Icy Comet buff from that weapon is not as good as it was before. This weapon is also got nerfed, but not in a damage way. So the cool thing about the Frosty Bloom that it's sort of an upgrade for your one of the abilities we called Whiteout. So maintaining Whiteout requires special charges that are accumulated over time and with the use of abilities, thereby increasing its maximum duration. Whiteout can also be manually disabled. So this is really good. So you can turn it off, turn it on, your whiteout. So at any time, as long as you have those charges. I would show how this weapon actually works, but I think it's better just gonna make it for another video, just kind of showcasing of weapons, and at least what I have, how they works, and you know what's the passive bonuses from the weapons you get. So that's probably gonna be another video. Moving on to the artifacts. The Black Flame, it's more of a general artifacts because all of the artifacts gives you the damage dealt by 35% and health bonus by 300% because the max generation of the artifact is the 14th. The only difference between the artifacts, it's the extra passive bonuses. For example, the Black Flame gives you increases defense when wounded by 6%, increases the duration of the effect that transfers stats 2 times, and protects against the subsequent awareness effect. If you don't know what awareness effect, it's when you get the stimulant injection from Alchemist or a floodlight from Lightbinder or the Macavan's Guard buff. When that buff disappears, if you don't have a Black Flame, you get the awareness effect for 10 seconds, meaning you cannot get those buffs right away again while you have the debuff, if that makes sense. So basically using this artifact is mostly for the raids because this is where you utilize a lot of buffs and as often as possible. You can also use maybe Cutthroat Ring. It increases your critical chance by 5% per second. Dealing critical damage resets the bonus. You can use maybe Vulnerability Detector. You can use maybe a Tree Vein Idol for like a, you know, more of a safety, kind of like I give you like extra life to survive. But basically, like some of the legendary artifacts for DPS classes, it's probably going to be for the occasion. But mostly Black Flame should be fine. If somebody have any other thoughts on artifacts for maybe DPS classes, leave it in the comment section down below. Moving on to the jewelry and gems of power. So jewelry and gems of power fully set up for the DPS output, meaning that what people call it is a glass cannon setup. So jewelry will be armor fracture, damage to elite, main damage bonus on all of them. For the secondary stats, damage when combat starts, damage to stun targets, those are two main priority stats as well on all of the pieces right here. The third stats, I think it's only this crippling attack on those two. You don't know what's the crippling attack is. Your attacks may slow the enemy down for 6 seconds. So it depends on how many stats you have. So it's 3 and 3. So for 6 seconds, I can slow down the enemies. There's a chance kind of a slowing down. And the reason why is because the gems of power will have damage to slow targets. And again, the key stats will be critical chance, critical damage, and main damage bonus on all of them. But the secondary stats will be chain killing, damage to slow targets. Third stats could be optional, whatever you want. Me personally, I went for some reason defense when wounded, so that's fine for me. And only Emerald and Topaz would have the companion chain attack. But then the other one is the chain killing, meaning when you kill multiple enemies in one time, 3 or more enemies are killed, your damage temporarily increased by 24 seconds. So again, it's all about the damage output. All right, moving on to the symbols. Again, since it's all fully damage output, we're going with the emblems of destruction. But again, emblems, you basically can use it for the occasions. Depends what you're running, depends what you do, depends what you want. And probably nobody's using emblems of speed most of the time, never seen it. But like emblems of pain, emblems of destruction, if you want to get a heal, mercy, protect yourself, I guess, emblems of protection. So in raids, you rarely utilize the emblems of destructions because you're going to have to pick them up. And sometimes it not always works when you're trying to focus more on the just DPS part. So and again, maneuver dodge to protect yourself, same thing with the divine intervention. The hunt technique is actually really good. Enhanced versions of class abilities are triggered more often, meaning when you get that free icy comment that pops on the left side of your screen, that kind of boosts that chance, meaning that you can proc that more often compared to if you're not going to use that symbol. And again, we go in support mode. Since it's in a group, everybody's using support mode, so multiple DPS classes or any other people or classes can actually get that support mode boost, which all goes about the damage. And then awakening power or reactive material, and again the black mark. For the weapon, we can either go for integrator transformer, or if you want, you can still use the Nerian's hammer. It also works pretty well. So if the improved Nerian's hammer you have, then it also might work, because when you stick your weapon to the ground, it will give you additional to like what 10 or 15% damage boost from your abilities. Integrator doesn't do anything else, just the launching the ball of lightnings and stuff like that, but it's still higher damage compared to Nerian's hammer. So you have to kind of see what you want to. If you don't have the integrator's transformer, but you have the improved Nerian's hammer, of course you're gonna use that. Moving on to the class symbol. So we have IC cover. When inside their own or an allied whiteout, the Cryomancer gains the crystal shield effect. If the crystal shield has already been used, its duration is not reduced as long as the Cryomancer stays within the whiteout. So meaning if you used your cryo shield, your personal skill, and then you walked into the whiteout, you're gonna keep having that crystal shield going on around on you while the whiteout is active. Moving on, Herald of Storm. Your companion attacks apply intense cooling and reduce the cooldown of jagged ice and stasis by 2 seconds. Next one, on the last one, is the Icy Storm. Every 2 seconds, a random enemy within whiteout gets a hit by a free icy comet. When it appears, the icy meteor effect is not activated. So yeah, that's pretty much all. I think that's actually all for abilities, equipment, and all of that. And yeah, we're just gonna moving on to the last part where we're gonna talk about the bad and the good parts about this class. Alright, let's talk about what's good about Cryomancer. First, it is a great control class with a freezing and slowing enemies down. Even ultimate ability can freeze bosses in squad, group, invasion, and trial missions. Except bosses and distortions and avatar, of course, which makes sense, but it would be pretty cool if Cryo Ulti would freeze bosses at least in distortions as well. In general, it is a great class and fun to play. Also because in a current state of the game for the new player progression, it might be one of the good choices to go for as a new player until you get 25 Spark of Transformation to unlock Groove Walker. As any other default classes, damage is low compared to the newest classes like Firestarter or even Groove Walker. From what I understand, all of the default DPS classes, even with the pay-to-win weapons, are still not properly scaled to the level where the game is right now to be useful damage-wise to play those classes. And what they're trying to do is compensate that with the weapons and Invasion Atlas bonuses for those classes. Now, there is one ability that no one uses if you play Cryomancer, well, or at least I don't use it pretty much at all, which is the Jagged Ice. I think the reason why is because that ability makes you stationary. So it would be nice if you can cast that ability and move at the same time. And I would also decrease cooldown on the ultimate ability for sure, down to like maybe 4 minutes I would say. But again, the main problem of all default classes, they are not scaled to the level where the game is right now. That is all I can say. Great class ruined by lack of damage. On this note, I'm gonna end this video. If you liked it, smash that like button. If not, dislike it. Don't forget to subscribe, activate notification that you're not gonna miss new video I post. Follow me on Twitter, join my Discord server. All links you can find in the description. Until the next time, take care.